Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Okay, welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, on the radio, on podcasts, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com. We've been talking about this court case by the Uvalde parents of deceased children who were killed in the Uvalde school massacre. And we know this is a sensitive topic, and we grieve also for those families and those children. But I think it's an important topic to discuss because there's a lawsuit involved. And so this could be a hidden legal issue blind spot for parents of teenage boys. If the lawsuit is against Activision, the maker of a video game called Call of Duty, and against Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, we'll talk about the advertising that is claimed to have occurred, and against Daniel Defense, the manufacturer of the firearm that the Uvalde shooter used. And we'll talk about lots of other things, so just keep us dialed in. We're with Dr. John Delatorre, forensic psychologist, and Kirk Harrison, who is a co-host here at Talk Law Radio, and attorney Blake Newberry, who likes to play video games in his spare time. And so we talk a little bit about the law and a little bit about psychology. Dr. Delatorre, in the law, you studied a master's program at St. Mary's in the law. You probably remember this also, that in order to prove a wrongful death lawsuit, you have to prove causation. There's duty, breach, causation, and damages. So does this video game cause a teenage boy to want to kill other people? We've been talking about that already. How can the psychological profile of a quote normal teenage boy differ from the profile of somebody that is probably already going to commit a mass act of violence? How is the profile different?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. Speaking about what is typical and what isn't typical, what's expected and what isn't expected. I want to be clear that anybody is capable of anything at any time for any reason, and because of that, we really struggle to kind of build what is most people like to call a profile of who's going to be a shooter. There is no singular profile for what kind of person is going to do this. We see a particular set of individuals who do this here in the United States, but that doesn't have to be the same thing across the globe. And so what we've seen here in the United States is that a lot of these individuals have, again, we started with the grievance gathering, but what their experience, what their emotional experience is that of loneliness, of desperation, of depression, and it's really turned inward. They have these thoughts of suicide. They believe as though the world isn't they shouldn't be in the world and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, they're not actually capable, or maybe they attempted and they weren't successful, but they're not actually able to commit suicide. Instead, it turns outward and becomes the sort of catalyst. Because they aren't even successful in harming themselves, the world must really hate them, because again, they already believe that the world is a hateful place against them. And so they are so focused on the negative. They're so focused on the things that cause problems within their lives that they don't see the joyfulness, they don't see the connectedness, they don't see the individuals who are reaching out and trying to help them, asking them how they're doing. They chalk it all up to antisociality and that people are only asking because they have some kind of ulterior motive. they enter into a state of paranoia where they can't trust anybody, including family or friends. And once that happens, all the red flags and all the yellow flags that you expect to see, that you want to see, that if we told ourselves, see, if we just acted on this one thing, we could have done something. They hide all that stuff until they're ready to then, once they've accumulated all the resources, once the plan is in place, once they feel prepared, and they have to feel prepared. Once they feel prepared to engage in the behavior, that's when everything ratchets it up. And that's where you'll see the YouTube videos. That's where you'll see the Instagram posts. That's where you'll start seeing all of these other things, because at that point, unless you physically stop them, they're going to do it.
Well, some people blame the shooter's parents or their family for not raising them right. Is there anything to that? Well,
I mean, Ethan Crumley's parents have both have been found guilty for their culpability. So I think, we talk about duty, right, when we talk about these civil cases. And I do believe parents have to be parents. Parents can't ever be friends of their children. And so there is a duty that parents have to raise their children to express the vulnerable emotions. That includes hate and that includes anger. Those are normal human emotions. But you have to be able to express them appropriately without causing aggressive behaviors. So I think it's important and imperative on parents to be able to model such behaviors. But that's also putting a lot on parents, because a lot of parents, maybe they don't have those skills necessary to do it. So I do think parents bear responsibility, but ultimately the person made a choice. They didn't have to do this thing. They chose to do this thing. They bear their ultimate responsibility.
And I agree. It's been I don't know how long, probably since the beginning of time, somebody raises, let's say 5 kids, one goes off and does this, and the other 4, you might have 2 pastors, you might have I'd say a lawyer, but no, you can go off and be something else, an engineer, you could be, a volunteer that goes all over the world with first aid and everything. I mean,
and they always wonder what happened
to that one, but you don't know. Sometimes people are different. Right. Even children are different. I got 2 boys, and I can tell you they're completely different. Raised in the same house, raised with the same rules, raised with everything the same. They're different. And that, thank goodness for different, because my family, we got 6 boys. We didn't have all, we weren't, Lord knows we weren't altar boys, but I'm going to tell you, none of this came out. We just,
Blake, what about the court cases against that other video game, Grand Theft Auto? Some of the reports I read were that the video game was addictive, and that was mentioned in this court case also.
I think a video game being addictive is different than it influencing you to be violent. Like, just because it's fun to play, you have these microtransactions that feel like a casino. Like, it stimulates the joy in your brain and makes it fun. I mean, that's different. Being addictive and wanting to constantly play it and forgetting your responsibilities doesn't tie into you being violent.
Right.
I mean, you could say, I'm a person who enjoys going to Vegas, but you don't see me going to Vegas every week and blowing $10,000 because I enjoy gambling because it's fun. Mm-hmm. It's also on the person to make the right choices.
Right. You're able to
like that.
Control your own behavior.
Yeah. So being likable and enjoying it and maybe making your life worse because you're constantly playing something that's a whole other issue than being violent.
Right.
But
John,
it doesn't stem to violence.
What do you think about the addictiveness of video games?
I think, of course they are. Of course, that's kind of the point. They need you to keep playing it, right? And yes, you get the reward center, the dopamine goes every time you get whatever transaction you were looking for, whatever goal is achieved, whatever mission objective has been satisfied. Yeah, you get that. But of course, it's designed to be that way. Television shows are designed to be that way. Food is everything is designed to satisfy that reward zone that we have inside of our brains. But some individuals are not capable of regulating that part of themselves, and that's when they start falling deeper into traps. Mm-hmm. But that's not the same thing as someone wanting to engage in an act of mass violence.
Right. So should we as a society focus more on advertising or talking about the benefits of good mental health? You know, a lot of the commercials on TV are geared toward prescription medication. Maybe there should be some commercials about how to handle some of these problems if you're addicted to video games or gambling. You know, there's resources out there.
Yeah, no, I think that society as a whole has to really take a hard look at what it considers important. Teachers need to be paid better. They 100% need to be paid better. And that, you know, parents need to have, you know, the ability to actually parent. They need to have to model those skills. Mental health professionals need to be paid what they're worth. Students also need to recognize that they can do things, that they have agency, and that they can talk about their problems, that there's an authority figure in their school that isn't trying to hurt them, but that can actually help them in some way. Society itself needs to determine how it needs to go, and there's so much more that it needs to do rather than have conversations about gun access and stuff like that. Those are problems, to be sure, but those aren't the problems that are going to solve the underlying issue of why violence happens.
The other thing is, you know, and a lot of people do it, you know, they restrict how much time the kids spend in front of the screen. You need to, I'm old, okay, so our deal was, one, they didn't listen to us until you were really old, and two, if you were inside, that was a mistake, okay? Yeah. And I think we're going to have to, if you want to do something simple, kick them out the door, okay? They're going to come back with skinned knees or a bump on the head or something like
outside,
that. Let them meet the other kids in the neighborhood and form interactive communication with each other. That's the one problem that's going on far beyond just the games being played, people on it. Once they get off the game, they grab their phone and then they're texting each other. Right. Texts have no emotions, okay? Right. The game has no emotions. None of those things have emotions. And then you meet a person and they can't read each other. How many of us have taken classes in communication and said, what is it, 9/10 of communication is the one that doesn't speak. It's your face, it's your eyes, it's the way you act, the way you sit back and all. That has to come back. I mean, we're going to end up with a lot of people that misread each other and get quickly angry because they misread the little annotations that you were doing with your body. Right. And so that comes back to the parenting again. Hey, man, yeah, you got this. I don't want to say we were great parents or anything, but we never bought a video game. We never bought a video console. They bought the game. They bought the console. Yeah. Well, they had to figure out a way to make money. Not an allowance, okay? Yeah. They had to figure out what to do, and I'm going to tell you now, there's stuff out there. You know, one of my boys was he was 12 years old when he got a little patch, so he could referee soccer games. He made a ton of money doing that stuff.
Okay, Kirk, we got to wrap up and take a break. So stay tuned. We'll talk more about this court case.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the hosts know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.